Every single one of us, autistic or not, is going to lose someone we love in our lives at some point. The question is, as an autistic person, how will we handle it? What will be our coping mechanisms? And will we make it through? Hi, and welcome back to my channel. I have something very different I want to talk about today, something that's been on my mind for a little while, and I'd like to share that with you. And it's something we all have to deal with at some point in our life. In this video, I'm going to tell you about a couple personal experiences for me of losing someone I love, and I'll also give you some tips of how to handle loss. I found some good articles that I'm going to include to help us all, because we're all going to need this at some point. What has gotten my mind on this topic has been recently with my dad getting sick and having to go to the ER and being there for like 2 weeks in the hospital, and him just turning 80 years old. It just makes me realize time is short. Trying to think about how I'm going to handle when he's not here anymore, or my mom. And so far in my life, I've only lost one person that really hurt when they passed away, to where it was hard for me to cope. And I'm going to talk about how I coped through that, how it was different, and how I'm anticipating I will cope again. So at my grandmother's funeral, my cousins luckily had my best friend Laura was with me, my cousin, and it's her grandmother too. And we took pictures with her at the casket, and I had those pictures processed and developed, and when I got them back, I just couldn't look at them. I couldn't keep them, and I had to throw them away. And that's not how I wanted to remember her. And I think the open casket concept is a very hard one for us. It's hard for anybody to look at an open casket, but it affects me a lot too. And so I don't like the open casket concept at a funeral. I think it just brings more emotions, and it's harder. And who wants to remember their loved one like that? Don't you want to remember them when they're alive? So at the funeral, knowing what to say to people, how to behave, how to act, wanting to not be there, wanting to not socialize. When you get together at a funeral, you're expected to chit-chat with people. You may not feel like talking. And when you're autistic and you have trouble understanding and processing emotions, you don't want to have those conversations. They can bring out more. It can lead to a meltdown or breakdown that you don't want to experience in front of other people publicly. So it's made me totally rethink what funerals I would attend in the future. Now, there's been some other really hard and difficult funerals I've had to go to, including my husband's grandmother when she passed away. And when I was there at the visitation, it was the most awkward and awful experience for me. I couldn't process it. I didn't know what to say to my husband's family. I went to the hall and about had a breakdown. I just wanted to get away from everybody. And I didn't like the emotions of what I was feeling all around me. I could feel everyone's emotions. And I didn't know how to interact with anybody. And that was pretty much the funeral that made me never want to go to another funeral again. But then I had the loss of my stepdad, and this was a few years later. So of course I wanted to support my mom, and I went to that funeral. What I found during his passing away was I wanted to contribute something to the family. So I can process things better by being creative and using creative processes. And so I took a picture of my stepdad that I'd taken for Christmas one year, and I made a new creation out of it. I made something beautiful out of something that the family could enjoy. it was my way of contributing, I felt like, to the situation. When I didn't really know what to say or how to comfort people, I felt like using my talents to create something could bring some joy possibly in the moment, something to last, something for them to remember and have. And so the family really appreciated it, and they used it at the funeral as the picture was framed there, and it meant a lot to me. So I told myself that I will never go to another funeral again unless it's a very immediate family member. I am not going to another funeral. I will send a nice arrangement of flowers or whatever I can provide, but it's just too much, too overwhelming for me. It just takes all my energy away and puts me in a funk that I can't handle sometimes. So my own parents, in their late 70s, early 80s, have been talking about what they would want their funeral to be like, or if they want to be cremated or they want to be buried. And so my dad, it's a very hard subject to talk about with my parents, and I have definitely put it off. But it comes to a point where you have to know what they're going to want and what you're going to have to do. And I've told my dad, I said, you can tell me verbally, but you're going to have to write it down because I'm not going to remember all that. And he's talked about being cremated, and he knows from what I've told him how devastating a funeral would be for me and how I can't handle an open casket. That would not be something I would be able to handle at all. It's very nice when your parents realize you can't handle something and they want to accommodate you because they know after they're gone, you're the one that's left behind to deal with things and pick up the pieces. And so for my parents to be willing to help me out what's going to be one of the hardest times of my life by trying to accommodate my feelings and emotions, it's very comforting, and it means a lot to me that they would consider that. So the other thing of dealing with when someone you love, somebody passes away, is dealing with the things they have left behind that you have to deal with and go through. So while my mom is alive, she has a house full of things she inherited from her mother. And my mom has a lot of things she's kept from when me and my brother were little. I only get to go visit about once every other month. We live quite a little distance away, and I work full time. And so I don't get to go up there very often, but every time I go, I have a purpose, not only to spend time with her, but to do it in a productive manner, to go through those things in the house and be getting rid of those things while she's alive. Because when she's not, it's going to be even harder for me to get rid of those things, to deal with the loss of her, not only that, but then have to go through all these precious things she's kept. So I've told my mother since my autism diagnosis, when you pass away, I'm not going to be able to handle going through all this stuff and dealing with it on my own. I can't do it. And I broke down and cried, and that's the day she realized it's time to start getting rid of things. We're going to talk about some coping strategies that you can use that I found in some articles to help us both. Sometimes it can be really hard to find the words to describe what is going on within us, and I think that's why it all just comes out in a ball of tears for me. And further, autistic people process information at different speeds. We can have emotional processing delays. We don't know how we're feeling right in the moment. We can't explain it to people. Some of us can take hours or days to figure out what's causing our emotion. So you think of typical reactions when people hear of the loss of a loved one. Ours may not be typical. It might be delayed reactions because of these reasons. Autistic adults may react to grief in a variety of ways, including typical grief responses for some autistic people. That's not me. Delayed or extreme reactions, and increased autistic traits. What I mean by increased autistic traits is you may experience sensory issues more intensely during that time. Like for say you're wearing a dress to a funeral you're already upset, and then the fabric feels way uncomfortable, or where you're sitting does not feel good against your back, like you're just noticing your senses more. Or it could lead you into meltdowns or shutdowns. Obviously, you're emotional over the one you love have passed away. It could affect you in that way. You may have difficulty planning your days in the days ahead, or organizing, concentrating in general. These may affect you after the loss of someone very close to you in your life. There's a website, if you're not familiar with it, I didn't know it existed. It's called Adult Autism Health Resources. Something we should probably know about, don't you think, to maybe check out? There's an article on there called Autism and Grief, and talks about processing loss, what to do as an adult. If you're an autistic adult, lose someone you love, how to process loss. It said, what I found interesting in this article that the other articles about grief did not mention, is it says that during that time we might have an increase in creative activities such as drawing, painting, or collecting. So we're just coping the best way we can, trying to get our mind off the pain and grief. And for a lot of that, it's our hobbies or interests. And so it makes sense that we would turn to those during those times. If you like to write poetry, then during that time you might focus your poetry on dedicating it to writing about the one you're mourning the loss of. Or if you do art, you might do art that expresses how you feel and helps you process in that way. Like after my grandmother passed away, I wrote poetry and went to her graveside and read it to her, because that helped me to process the best I could. So it includes some creative ways you can remember your loved one. If you have lost someone recently in your life, you can design printed memorial cards. You can create a photo book or a memory book. I like that idea. You can make it portable, where you can keep it in your car also and have it with you. You can assemble a slideshow. When my dad was in the hospital, I took some of his old home movies that he made in the 1950s, and I edited them, and I put it together and made something special for him. It's how I coped when my dad was in the hospital. You can creating a drawing or collage, or establish a routine making these types of art projects. You can establish a dedicated place to put your loved one's pictures for a while, to remember them and see those, if you can handle that. But you have to figure out what works for you after you lose someone in your life that you love. No one can fully understand how they're going to react when they lose someone they love. You don't know till the emotions hit you. But if you're at least preparing yourself in some way, maybe it can help you to know what coping strategies you can use to help you out. And just knowing that you will get through it, and you will be able to get through it, and you'll have to the best of your ability. Plans ahead of time as much as possible for the situation. If you have a mother or father who can give you definite guidance on how they want their funeral to happen, how they want to be buried, where they want to be buried, how they want it to take place, if they want music played, what songs do they want played. It's just something you need to have as a family discussion. It's not anything that's going to be easy to talk about, or that you're going to want to talk about. You're going to be happy that you had that conversation, because when they do pass away, you will have some direction to go in. So try to plan ahead the best you can to know what the loved ones in your life, what they want to happen to them after they pass, so you're not left hanging, trying to figure it out when you're already emotional. There's some plan in place. And talk to them about how a funeral would affect you and what would help you out. What can they do if they're concerned about your emotions and how you're going to handle it afterwards, to help lighten your load. So thank you for watching this video today, and I hope you got some ideas. Would love for you to share down in the comments. Have you lost anybody that you love in your life? And if you want to talk about it, or have you gone through that yet? Or how do you How do you see this topic? Hope to see you in the next video. Bye.